It's not every day that you hear about a completely new way of making a movie. And had someone told me that they were gonna make a movie this way, I probably would have said it was a bad idea.
We set out to make the film without a script, without a shot list. All of the dialogue is improvised by the people who are playing themselves. It's stuff I could never have written.
But I would have been very wrong, because Sam Davis's latest film has gone on to be nominated for the Academy Award for Best Short Film.
The Singers.
And it's an incredibly moving piece. They took a unique approach. They actually cast everyone in this film over the course of a year by digging into the far recesses of the internet, whether it be TikTok, Facebook, or even sometimes in person, finding various buskers and people with hidden talent from all walks of life. And then on top of that, they shot this on 35mm film. It was a true documentary approach with a verite perspective based on an almost 200-year-old short story. How did you go about using film in a documentary?
I was more concerned actually about rolling out in the middle of like some great documentary moment, which always happens when I shoot docs on film. There were plenty of moments while we were filming where I was like, oh, shit, this is going to be a disaster, and moments like that.
Hearing all this seems chaotic, but what you get in the end is magic. I had the chance to talk with Sam Davis, the director and cinematographer, about how he pulled off the film Singers.
Everybody, this is how it's going down. Free beer and $100 to the best singer in the bar tonight.
Damn. Sam, thank you so much for being here, brother. It's always great to chat with you. I want to jump right into this. What fascinated me with this project is, in a way, it's a documentary, but in a way, it's a scripted film. But I heard you say that on the first day, your AD kind of got everyone together, told everyone, well, there isn't really a shot list or a schedule. So how did you go about having the faith of having no restrictions on a project?
Yeah, well, first, thanks for having me, Mark. Always fun to be here talking to you. Yeah, my background is obviously in documentary, and when I set out to make this film, the initial spark of the idea was really just as much the source material, which is this short story that was written in 1850, as it was the idea of taking that story and infusing it with all these, sort of documentary subjects, real people, real talents who could come and play themselves and improvise. And it was the opportunity that the idea presented to marry my documentary background with a work of fiction that really sparked for me. This was going to be an exercise in leaning into the unknown and taking big risks and doing things in a really unconventional way. We set out to make the film without a script, without a shot list. There were certain shots that we had, preconceived, but they were more like detail shots, like the pushing on
like the bill,
$100 bill,
ceiling, yeah.
Things like that. I thought, oh, how cool would it be if we did sort of a visual sort of metaphor of, if you look a little closer, maybe there's something special there, or the one sort of genius in the rough. There were certain concepts like that we knew we wanted to shoot in some way, but really kept it extremely open-ended when it came to the coverage and the script. All of the dialogue is improvised by the people who are playing themselves. Is stuff I could never have written.
We lost 3 guys in one whack. There was a scout truck. They were all the way out in front, half a kilometer in front of us. It's in a fucking mushroom cloud like doors.
Can you talk about the technical approach in the Sam? How you lensed this, how you lit this? It's very interesting. It looks very practically lit the way you went about it.
Yeah, we referenced a lot of Renaissance era paintings, really contrasty, sort of glowy skin tones. Mm-hmm. And we did some tests with a digital camera in the location once we found it, just with our producers and myself and my gaffer, Max. We found that skip bouncing off of the bar top was a really effective way to achieve that quality of light. The bar top was like this sort of warm green, kind of speckled laminate material, and the way that it glowed up into a face, if we drove really hard light down into the bar, was really beautiful, and especially in the 3/4 sort of French over angle. So being behind the guys, looking back toward the bar, there was something really magical about that angle. Also very technical. For the people seated at the bar, especially in the French over angle, we were able to horizontally flop all of the coverage. And that was really helpful in the edit because we could cheat certain reactions for one direction or the other throughout the film because they're all facing the same direction. That was really versatile in the edit. The other thing that we found with the skip bounce was that it accentuated all the lines on these guys' faces and in a really beautiful way. It really brought out the character of these faces. We wanted the coverage to start really tight, almost exclusively singles. One, because we wanted to indulge in the faces, but two, because we wanted to isolate characters at the beginning of the film and then slowly start to expand to connect the characters over the course of the film as there is this sort of community and catharsis that emerges with the sing-off. So the coverage slowly starts to open up. You get a little bit more oriented in the space. You see the pool table. A guy gets up and starts dancing, and we kind of pan with him across the room.
And practically was those, they felt like almost like Fresnel lenses or tungsten, like traditional.
Yeah, we lit with almost exclusively tungsten lighting. Something about tungsten light on 35 is it added to the nostalgia that already comes with film, I think. Sure. And there's just this really rich quality of light. Sometimes
LEDs are a little too perfect, and the tungsten has that organic feel to it, the way that film would obviously portray as well.
It also made the set even hotter. We were shooting in LA in the summer. It was like a 100-degree weekend, and the fire was burning inside. All the guys are layered in winter clothing, and we got tungsten lights just banging down on people. It was cooking.
If you enjoyed this conversation with Sam, we're actually going to be doing a live Q&A session with him, part of the Art of Documentary, but we're opening this up to everyone. So even if you're not in AOD, you can be a part of this call. It's going to be an exciting chance to talk to him about this process, how he's using his documentary instincts to influence his filmmaking right now. Sam is a machine when it comes to documentary filmmaking. Multiple films he's worked on 3 times now have been nominated for the Academy Award, and he's even won it for the film Period End of Sentence. And this live call that we're doing with Sam is part of our monthly industry expert calls that you get if you're part of the Art of Documentary, but we're opening this up to the public. And if you're not familiar with AOD, it has thousands of filmmakers from all around the world who get to take part in our incredible courses that help you level up your storytelling, your editing, cinematography, and even producing. The testimonies coming out of AOD we can hardly keep up with. We see filmmakers from all corners of the globe in AOD, going from people who in some cases haven't even picked up a camera to releasing their films in some of the biggest streamers and festivals from around the world. Not only are we seeing exclusive breakthrough from the filmmakers in Art of Documentary, but we're watching them take huge strides forward in their businesses, creating sustainable income, landing more clients, and getting to work on their passion projects and documentaries. On my honeymoon, I got to meet AOD members in 4 different countries, and it's amazing seeing the stories of collaboration that they're gaining through our courses and community. And this April, we're reopening the doors for AOD. This only happens a couple times a year. So get on our VIP list and you'll get first access to the limited seats available in each course. And you'll get it at our early bird rate, which is the best price possible. Make sure to get on our email list so you don't miss out on any of the free workshops we're holding or events like we're doing with Sam Davis. Now back to the interview. How many feet did you go through on this film? I was so curious. And how many days of production?
We shot for 4 days. The shooting ratio, honestly, I wish I had that stat, but someone just asked me this, but I don't know it. We rolled a good amount of film. I do something, which is what I do in documentaries when I shoot film. I don't believe in slating.
I think
neither.
The second you do that, it becomes a film.
No, yeah, exactly. There's nothing more counterintuitive than clapping one of those movie things in front of someone's face. And
I fully agree.
So just like that, here with a bunch of first-time actors, I wasn't going to slate. And actually, we would roll sound all day. So we rolled sound when everyone got there and got mic'd, and then we cut at lunch, and then we rolled after lunch, and we cut at the end of the day. And all of that audio is usable raw material. There's so much great banter. There's so much good story in there, and it's woven into the film 2-3 layers deep, even in the sound design, so that there's this really rich, immersive kind of quality to it. But the way I work in documentaries when I shoot film is you have to mentally edit. So my finger is always on the button as an operator, and I'm waiting and I'm being patient and I'm trying to be in the moment and be sensitive. And then as soon as, I feel a spark, we're rolling. And when I feel like we're being wasteful, then we'll cut. And this was the same. We would do a 20-minute long take, but actually we're only rolling 2 minutes of that 20 minutes. The cast doesn't know the difference. They're just generating, they're building toward, and I'm helping them get to a certain place or throwing things into the mix to try to spark. And when it does, I'm ready to roll.
Yeah. How do you talk to a conversation that's unfolding without ruining it?
You have to be in tune with it and try to be tactful and not talk any louder than you have to, because there are moments where I'm giving direction maybe quietly enough that the lavs didn't pick me up. That could still make it in the film, especially if there's other sound design, like the hum of a refrigerator under the bar. You know, that could be enough to cover up my voice,
or,
kind of
or
guiding
fish
someone
singing
through
on the
something.
wall.
Exactly. Yeah. Billy Bass.
What I did want to kind of really hone in, the interesting thing for me, and maybe this is having a directing background myself, I'm always thinking, what does that conversation look like when you're actually taking real people, which we'll talk about in a sec, because no one in this film was an actor. You found them online, and we'll talk about the casting. How do you direct someone who's never been on film? What are you prompting them? Are you giving them ideas? If you need actual plot points to be achieved, what is that conversation? What if we're a fly on the wall? What would that look like?
Well, I want to direct them as little as possible. I want to pretend as little as possible. And that's why I'm not writing roles for these guys to play or dialogue. In my experience, I think I set up a first-time actor to fail if I'm scripting dialogue for them. If they're not trained, you know, they don't know how to process that and deliver it in a way that feels real. But if I ask someone, hey, will you come and be in my film and do what you're doing right now? Be yourself. You know, maybe I've researched them, I've watched videos of them, or I've had conversations with them and I've learned about them and I've heard, you know, their isms, or their great stories, or I have things that I can pull from, you know, source material, that I know is within them. And I might throw something at them that I heard them say previously, and they sort of take that and run with it. The whole premise here is to pretend as little as possible, to take this sort of cute fictional idea of a sing-off in a bar with all these crusty men and weave it with hopefully as much real humanity as possible to kind of create this interesting tone. The film is not meant to be literal necessarily. Of course, you're not going to have all of these, you know, sort of incredible talents in a small town bar. It's heightened, and it becomes increasingly heightened throughout the film. But I thought, what if you know, what would this feel like tonally? I think it would be a potentially really unique and original tone if we could sort of marry this almost like fable-esque plot with documentary subjects.
It got me so excited watching the film because you could feel the authenticity, and then having learned that these were all real people, it reminded me right away the tone of The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, the last film in that series, when they're all in the carriage going to the idea of like they're going to heaven. I was watching this because short films like this feels steeped in metaphor. There's a scene right before the ending of the film where there's some tears and a hug. I know you mentioned you wanted the film to start with a fight and end with a hug. Were those tears real, and how did that hug come to be?
There's an interesting story there where Mike Young, who plays the bartender, I had a conversation with him and told him, hey, Mike, I've always thought, you know, that would be interesting if the bartender was singing to someone he lost. And he told me that he had actually in real life lost his wife recently.
Wow.
And we talked about it and decided that he would dedicate that performance to her. So that's coming from a really real place. And so anytime we could make the performances about more than just the lyrics of the song, we tried to do that. You know, we wanted there to be depth there. And I think you really feel it at that sort of emotional climax with Mike finishing on Chain Melody. Everything about it was better than it even was in my imagination. So that was a really special moment.
Was there stress, though? You have 10 minutes on a mag, and I heard you were trying to do 30-minute takes. Here you are with this magic unfolding. What's that like? How did you go about using film in a documentary?
On the performances, we had a couple of 1,000-foot mags, so we had a little bit longer record time on those. But we made sure before any take, performances were the most constructed and most controlled thing that we shot in the film. You know, they're relatively the same each take, and So that wasn't too difficult. I was more concerned actually about rolling out in the middle of like some great documentary moment, which always happens when I shoot docs on film. But luckily, I don't think we lost any. Yeah, it would have been devastating if we had rolled out on that final moment of Mike singing Unchained Melody.
That's what comes with it. You need a really, really good first assistant, like a
absolutely
mag loader on that. Give me some insights. One of the things I'm most curious about is, what was that spark? Were you out there looking for a film? I know a lot of filmmakers want to make a project and then do the next one, and they're so busy with commercial work. Did you just give yourself a week and say, I'm going to find a film? Or do you have that documentary instinct where you're searching for the next project? How did you know to take a short story from almost 200 years ago and marry it with a bunch of people you found on TikTok?
Well, I think I'm probably more in the documentary camp on that one, where I feel like I'm always searching. Just as I live my life, I'm always, filtering everything through that part of my, creative brain. Could this be something? Is there an idea here? Is there a seed? And I read George Saunders' book because it's a great storytelling, tool, and happened to stumble on this story. And like I said, even so, I wasn't immediately thinking this is it. Like, this is the story for me. It was that coupled with this idea of how to marry, documentary and I think also presented a unique and maybe healthy opportunity to use the algorithm to do something extremely human. We ironically spent a year on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube training the algorithm to expose us to a greater sampling of people than we could have ever reached
to the videos
social media
that have less views.
Exactly.
You were forcing it.
Even some of the
guys
who are not singers.
Scrolling. Versus
maybe
doom
not
scrolling.
doom scrolling. The film is very handmade and very human, and I'm really proud of that. But we did, we tapped into those tools to find these guys.
No, I think I loved when you called it healthy scrolling, because there's been times for my films I've found people through Instagram, and what I love about that process, and we teach this in AOD about finding characters, is you're no longer asking the algorithm to just feed your distraction. That's kind of what it's doing. It's like, you want to be distracted, you want to be entertained, but rather you're engaging with the algorithm with a level of curiosity, saying like, who is this person? What is there about them? Like, what makes them a unique, beautiful person, which we all are in our own way. And I think that's what's so fun, interacting with the algorithm as a tool for casting. Enlighten us just a little, Sam, on that casting process. We talked about this convincing your character. How did you bring them all together and get them on board to trust your vision?
Yeah, it was a year and change of commenting and messaging people, scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. And a lot of people think you're a scammer when you first reach out. If you're a documentarian, you know how this goes. There's a lot of that.
Totally.
Most of my doc projects in my career so far have started with like a cold message on Facebook or discovering something on social media. So there's definitely a trust building process there, which is very similar to making docs, and it's got to be mutual trust. I have to trust that they're going to be able to contribute something authentic to the movie, in most cases without being able to audition them properly or get them in front of a camera. And they have to trust that I'm going to not exploit them or make them look silly and represent them respectfully. And so that takes time, just like it did with docs. And from there, it's just a logistic gymnastics of trying to get everybody under one roof. And some of the risks that we took totally blew up in our face. One of our lead actors, who 2 days before the shoot got cold feet about getting on the plane because he hadn't been on a flight since Vietnam.
Wow.
And this is like, we asked for it. We asked we would have hired great, skilled, reliable actors in LA if we wanted to avoid this. So things were going to go wrong because we were taking risks. But I think ultimately the things that went right yielded a really unique tone for the film.
Documentary, I think why I always loved it is there's an imperfect way of people deliver their dialogue, and I hate scripting dialogue in my films, and I am right now for a feature, and I find I prefer the way people actually talk, because to me it's more believable. And so it sounds like you put yourself in a very vulnerable position, bringing a group of men who never met each other from all around the world, who some of them had never been on camera, or I guess just in the on social media, but it sounds like some of them you even found in person. I guess you were bringing a bunch of ingredients to the meal that you had never used before, so you didn't even know what the dish would be like at the end.
Yeah, we talked about it like chaos soup or something, curating chaos, all these ingredients that we were finding to get them in one bowl, a bowl being the bar, and then letting them kind of play off of one another and create this sort of unique alchemy was the whole approach.
There's a whole story to just even how, you know, you could have made a film about the making of the film. And I think that's always, if you could say that could be done about your project, I think it's a great indication that you're taking a new risk, that there's interest there.
Yeah, we should have done a better job on this film actually doing BTS, because we were so spread thin, just like getting the actual movie made, that kind of fell through the cracks. But now that the film is getting all this exposure, it would have been fun to have that a good look at the
next time
behind the
you
scenes.
need it, man. We have an army of amazing doc filmmakers in AOD who we've hired them in now probably 20 different countries to shoot behind the scenes for us, and they're lovely people who are fly on the wall and are big believers of the craft. Two last questions, Sam. What for you on this project are you bringing forward into your future work? What did you learn most that is a skill set or an insight that you want to apply to your work moving forward?
I think two things. One, to continue taking risks. There were plenty of moments while we were filming where I was like, oh, shit, this is going to be a disaster, and moments like that. Of course, now to have put it all together and done a really great festival run, and now to, for audiences and Netflix and the Academy to embrace the work like this, it's really emboldening. I intend to keep taking similar types of risks and trying to do ambitious projects and push myself out of my comfort zone. There's that. And then also, I think after I graduated from film school, I was afraid of being sincere. I thought it was really uncool to be sincere with my work. And The Singers is. I don't know if I knew it would be, but it just, there's humor in it, and there's emotion, and it's silly at times, and it doesn't take itself too seriously. And I think traveling around with the film to film festivals and hearing a room, a packed theater react to the film has just made I've fallen in love, I think, with making films that are a little bit of crowd pleasers. I'm always gonna make stuff where the craft is elevated, and I'm always gonna try to make the most original film that I can. But there's nothing wrong with making something that's really enjoyable, for people to watch, and maybe even a little bit sincere or earnest. All
my films were brooding projects until I made a film about a bunch of band members on the autism spectrum, and being in a theater where the audience is laughing alongside them. That was one of the cool. I never meant to go make films that were comedic. Right. And to your point, it's euphoric. So maybe that's the insight: is sincerity is a bit of a medicine, especially as an artist, when filmmaking can be a really tough career path. Yeah, and
a friend of mine who's a producer and saw the film at a screening, and she said that sincerity is the last great form of punk rock, something like that. So it
feels like it's more ska.
Right.
What's so interesting with this project, Sam, is it seems to break some rules. We often teach about being an assertive filmmaker, not being aimless, and you did have a vision. So what advice would you give for someone who's inspired by this idea of just letting life unfold in front of the camera? You kind of created a 4-day verite environment, but when you watch the film, it very clearly has a progression. So how do you balance that of having a curiosity but a director's vision? What advice would you give a filmmaker for that?
It's a good question. I think if you just have ingredients that you love and are curious about and that you believe in, and a great location or a great world, an immersive world, that's enough to be pretty confident about setting out to make a film. Compelling characters all under one roof. The roof happens to be this great dingy bar. I'm shooting on equipment that I know and trust, and that I know is going to elevate the work a step further. And I'm surrounded by a team of people who maybe shouldn't trust my vision because there's so many unanswered questions, but they do, and they do because of years and years of either working together or appreciating each other's work, building a relationship, and wanting, I think, to do something that they haven't done before. You know, everybody from the cast who had never acted before, and they took a big leap to the art department. A lot of people came on set for the first time to PA because they wanted to see the process of shooting film. People believed that we were doing something fresh and original, and they wanted to be a part of it. And that goes a really long way.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah. Doing something that perhaps might feel like a risk for you, and having the right people around. That I love the idea of being curious, just finding an environment and being curious. I think that's the blessing of documentary, is it gives us a format to just explore different people's ways of life. So Sam, thank you for making this film. I hope it does very well on Oscar night.
Thanks, Mark.
It was a joy to get to watch it. It's one of those films, I'll say, that I watched it with my wife and we immediately said, okay, let's watch it again. And that's a true nice sign of a rich film, that I think it has layers. I was telling this to my team on a film we're working on. I go, if we understand the film the first time we watched it, it might be the wrong choice, because it means that you haven't allowed the audience to explore your film. You've just answered every question along the way.
That's so true. Yeah. You want the audience to be asking questions, and you want them to see themselves in different characters, and you don't want to tie up every bow perfectly. You don't want to tie every thread into a perfect bow at the end. You want certain things to be uneven and to sting a little bit. Like the guy who leaves, so many people came for me after that. They were like, no, he was going to be the best.
Painful. That was painful. That was painful, but it was a bold decision. Yeah. Yeah. But what I love about that, man, is, we spent so much time after the film, Carolyn and I, talking about it. And so I appreciate that about a film like that, where you made some choices that were bold. Some people would say, oh, that's not, for story devices, you should have done it this way. But I think that's what's so great, is you get to explore it and do it that way, because then it creates conversations like we're having, or the conversations I know people have endlessly. And for me, man, it's really inspiring. It reminded me that it was like when I watched All Light Everywhere. I don't know if you've seen that film. And even when you guys did Period and End Sentence, it was, there's certain styles of doing documentary, but doesn't mean you can't find a new one. And I've always appreciated that about your work, that it's fresh. It's obviously following your curiosity, your insights, and it encourages me, and I hope people watch it as a filmmaker to find their style and their lane and go after that. Yeah.
Well said.
Appreciate the work you're doing. Yeah. And enjoy the press tour. Enjoy this moment. I know it's stressful, but yeah, just enjoy it, man. Good to see you.